Welcome, welcome. My name is Elizabeth A. Corshu. I am the founder and CEO of Nurse Exec Innovations, career coaching brand designed specifically for nurses and healthcare professionals and healthcare organizations. I am also the curator of the platform called Pass the Mic. Some of you are probably saying, what is Pass the Mic? Who's Pass the Mic? Pass the Mic is a platform established for visionaries, game changers, and advocates looking to execute their global footprint into society by way of healthcare, business, technology, culture, and so much more. Tonight, we have a special guest. He is Dr. Antonio Webb. He is the orthopedic spine surgeon located out of San Antonio, Texas. I'm so honored and it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. And we're not going to take up too much of your time because we know you're very busy. So I am going to jump right in and I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Dr. Webb. And I'm going to ask what inspired you or what moment, inspired you to become a doctor? Did you always know that you wanted to be a doctor?
Yeah, I guess I first wanted to become a doctor ever since a magnet program in high school, and that program exposed students to various careers in medicine. And ever since that program, I wanted to become a doctor. Had a really long and challenging path to get to this point, but finally made it after 14 years of training, and just really blessed to be in this position.
Very, very great. Wonderful, wonderful. So if you can also share, I know you briefly went in, you said it's been a long journey, but if you can kind of, I know you mentioned that you went to a magnet high school, but was there any Black doctors that you saw that might have kind of inspired you to take that path?
No, I had never saw a Black doctor growing up, never had met one. There was not like YouTube at that time where I could go online and see physicians who look like me in various specialties. And that's the reason why I'm so passionate about kind of mentoring and just serving as a kind of a inspiration to kids from similar communities as mine. I grew up a really challenging background in Shreveport, Louisiana, which was a pretty dangerous place at that time, and had several family members
Really?
in and out of jail. And just coming from that environment to get into this point, I want to serve as a kind of a role model and mentor to similar kids from similar backgrounds.
Wow, wow. Well, thank you for sharing. It's interesting because before we had this interview today, there was someone who commented and said, "Wow, this is the first time I'm ever even seeing a Black orthopedic spinal surgeon." And I
Mhm.
said, "Thank you. You were like confirmation as to why I've created this platform because I remember when I worked in my trauma ICU days, it was just myself and a department head chair who was a Black physician of trauma surgery, and the patients, they couldn't believe that we were a nurse and the department head chair, of trauma. So it's so important to have, the inclusivity in regards to diversity on all levels in healthcare. So if we can jump right in and, when you talk about, I noticed that you have a trailer, documentary coming out called Overcoming the Odds. And if
Mhm.
you can kind of share what experiences, I know you mentioned that you came from, a challenging background. And I always go back to my trauma ICU days where I was a younger nurse. I'm still young, but younger nurse. And I met with Latino and, Black young men that were basically all their exposure was gangs.
Mhm.
And I remember having conversations about, a lot of different things. And I remember giving them a little tough love in the ICU. And I was like, you really don't have to go that path, and I said, no judgment, right? No judgment zone. Some just, that is the only family they know. And I remember them saying to me, if I had a mother that was so strong and strict and cared like you did, I may not have gone down that path. So just if I can just get a little lens into what your experience, what your childhood looked like in a brief, of course, that would be multiple chapters in a book, right? So if you can just kind of share with us a bit of your experiences.
Yeah, and going back to your previous kind of statement, minority and kind of the diversity in medicine is a huge problem, especially physicians. For orthopedic surgeons, less than 1.9% of all orthopedic surgeons are African American. It's even less than that for spine surgeons. I would probably say less than 1%. So patients need to be treated by providers that look like them, and there's been multiple studies that show that their outcomes, they're more likely to adhere to treatment recommendations when they're treated by clinicians who look like them. So, but my story, just growing up in Shreveport, Louisiana, which was ranked the 8th most deadliest city in the U.S. Multiple years. Just my mom in and out of prison my whole life. She was actually shot and she's paralyzed from her waist down due to her drug addiction. My little sister did time in prison, as well as my little brother, who served a number of years for armed robbery. So just growing up in that environment, I wanted to kind of chronicle coming out of that environment and getting to this point and all the mistakes and failures that I faced and obstacles. And I detail all that in my book, Overcoming the Odds, which I released a couple years ago. And then my documentary just came out this past week. I just released it, and just serve as inspiration to, thank you, to a young kid who can just watch it or read my book, and then kind of hopefully that inspires them to reach their goals.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. So, in regards to what would you say has been the biggest challenge that you face as a Black male living? If we can do a reflection back to 2020 during the climate of the pandemic, the social injustices, mental health pandemic, so many levels. What did you find as not only a Black male, but as a professional, as a physician, as a son, as a brother, et cetera, what you found to be the challenge? Because I'm reading a lot of articles and studies about, not studies, but there's a lot of articles going around right now that there's a lot of challenges in regards to mental health, depression, and so forth, in regards to everything that's going on with the pandemic and racial injustices and inequalities and so forth.
Yeah, so I would say it's a combination of things. No one really knows what it's like to be a Black male in America, or even kind of Black in general. I mean, it's one of those things that it's just kind of hard to describe. And then on top of that, you have your microaggressions, you have your systemic racism that we face kind of on a daily basis. I would say that's the most challenging, and what's even more challenging is trying to have those conversations with my sons. I have two little ones, and just what do I tell them to do if they get pulled over by a police officer, or when they're in a situation where they feel like they're threatened. So that's been the hardest conversations to have. But it's definitely been a hard, 2020, and the combination of that as well as the pandemic, but with everything that's going on with all the unarmed killings of Black males, it's definitely been hard. But a lot of people, especially males, try to shy away from talking about their problems, including depression, anxiety. Those things are very common, but it's not talked about enough, which it should.
Yes. And in regards to, thank you so much for that response, very detailed. The other question I had, let's go, kind of dial back to the microaggression. So you've been a physician for more than a decade now. And for those that are following behind you in your footsteps, when dealing with the microaggressions that happen, whether it's during residency, whether it's, in medical, as a medical student, what would be some suggestions or recommendations that you were able to pull through or meet with resiliency to deal with some of those microaggressions? Because I can think back to all levels, whether it was as a staff nurse, whether it was an educator role, whether it was in administration, and so forth, so many levels. So what are your recommendations when dealing with microaggressions?
Yeah, so I would say it depends on your situation, kind of your environment, but there's a couple different ways you can handle this. Number one, you can brush it off. A lot of people do this, and just kind of, let it go. Another way of doing it is to address it kind of head on. Just talk to the person, say, hey, I really didn't appreciate that. This is how I feel. This is these are my thoughts about it. You can handle it that way. And another thing is just kind of wait, talk to your mentors, talk to your superiors, supervisors, and then address it at a later time. But over the years, I've used a combination of all three. But most of the time, for me personally, I just kind of brushed it off. But lately, especially with everything going on, I'm a little bit more blunt now. I'm just not tolerating as much as I did because as a resident, especially a surgery resident, it's a very hostile environment. It can be, historically, surgeons they're very kind of blunt and. I've been yelled at, I've been cursed out, I've been, you name it. I mean, surgery is very malignant at times. But hopefully times are changing, which, I see it's not as common as back in the day when surgeons would throw things across the room and curse you out. And, you can't do anything about it because, you're a trainee. But for me, it's a combination of all three of how you want to address it. And it depends on your personality, your comfort level, and, those things.
Well, I have to say, I admire you in that regards. I'm more of a head-on type approach, but I get it. Not every single situation can always be being head on. You have to kind of cool off and seek guidance from your mentors in regards to certain situations. So thank you for that. So, is there ever a time that as you were, whether it was, as a student, through your residency, or was there ever a time in your particular journey that you felt, I keep hearing the theme of imposter syndrome with some people. Did you ever feel or experience that at any time?
Yeah, absolutely. Imposter syndrome is very common, but it's not talked about enough. You have these thoughts that you don't belong, you're not smart enough. Maybe they chose you or picked you, accepted you to medical school or nursing school, dental school by mistake. But those thoughts are very common. A lot more people kind of experience them than kind of what's discussed. But when I'm talking to students and, sharing kind of my story, I always tell them that you have to kind of just reassure yourself and constantly tell yourself that you belong there. They didn't pick you up by accident.
Yes.
You're certainly capable performing kind of at the level of everyone else. And these are just common thoughts that people have, and you just have to keep reminding yourself of that.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. And I often say to myself, if I was able to write a letter to myself, what would it be? So the question I pose to you is that if you had a letter to write to your younger self, at what stage in your life would it be? And what would you write to yourself?
I would probably write to that middle school transition to high school stage. That's where I saw myself heading down the wrong path and hanging out with the wrong group of people and doing things that I should not have been doing. So I would, write back and tell myself to just, you kind of make up, you're made up of the closest people kind of around you. So you have to surround yourself with positive people that are going to hold you accountable and that are, if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, your friend or that person, supposedly friend, should, should hold you accountable. So, I would say surround yourself with positive people, and your actions, they can have consequences. You do something kind of early on that can stick with you for the rest of your life. So, writing the letter to myself, I would make sure
Yeah.
that I understood those things.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. So, if you had any final closing wisdom nuggets, what would you share with the audience that is watching now live today and those that will catch the replay?
Yeah, I would just, share my story so that I can be an inspiration to people out there. Along this journey, I've failed over and over again. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've definitely have struggled. Medical school was challenging. Residency was challenging. Fellowship, this whole journey has been challenging. But after each obstacle or challenge or failure, I try to ask myself, what can I do to better myself in the future? What could I have done differently? And I sit and I analyze and I try to better myself in the future. And as a surgeon, I
Mhm.
do that after every surgery. I take a couple minutes and I ask myself, what could I have done differently to, to complete that surgery in a more efficient and safe manner? And I take notes and try to better myself in the future. So that's kind of my leaving thoughts, is to just do exactly that. One of my professors in medical school stated, failure is not in the falling down, it's in the failure to get back up and try again. So that's exactly what I've done
Awesome.
throughout my whole life.
Wonderful, wonderful. And just two things I just wanted to make note of for those that might not know about you. I did read up about that you are a, a veteran with the, did you do some work with the combat? If you can expand on that. And I also noticed that you did some international work. You did some global work in Haiti, which is a place where my mother's from. So if you could just kind of expand on that, and then I'm going to let you go because I know, you have a very busy day, evening ahead of you if you haven't dictated notes already. If you could just expand on those two.
Yeah, I actually have two more. I'm giving two talks right after this, so I got one
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
a talk right after that. So, and then I dictate notes later tonight. But so I joined the Air Force at age 17. I did 8 years in the military. I was a medic, and we deployed to Iraq in 2005 to a pretty dangerous location, which we got shot at probably 5 to 6 times per day. And then, I've done several mission trips. I went to Haiti, Port-au-Prince on 2 separate occasions to do, surgery, as well as Liberia, West Africa, back in 2014, right before the Ebola outbreak. That's one of my passions, and hopefully,
Wow.
after things kind of die down, I could continue to, just give back that way.
Well, definitely, definitely. Thank you so much. And then what's the best way for anyone who's catching the replay or watching live to get in contact with for possible speaking engagements or maybe possible? I see there aren't too many tours here on the East Coast for your documentary. Will there be any in the New York, Jersey area?
I think maybe I lose track. I've done 19 talks this month, so it's been a busy month. I have 3 more remaining, but I don't recall too many on the East Coast. I did do one in New York, I believe. I believe it's Albany. I have everything is kind of
Yeah,
in.
it's upstate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's upstate New York. I already kind of read through, but it's upstate New York. So
Oh,
if you want to get like the Philly, Jersey, just an
yeah.
FYI. But what's the best way to get in touch with you? Because I know you're busy.
Yeah, so all of my social media sites are Antonio Webb MD. My website is AntonioWebbMD.com, and then the documentary and any more information is OvercomingTheOddsMovie.com.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. God bless. Be safe and take care. We'll be in touch.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime.